Hey everybody, I'm Ryan, this is Kristen, and this is Passing Notes. And today we're talking about how to negotiate note deals.
Yeah, because it's different.
How is it different? Why is it different? Obviously it's different, but let's
It's different than
jump right in.
It's different than negotiating a regular piece of property.
And why do you why is that?
Well, because we do, in note deals, you're buying an unpaid principal balance. So there's nothing set there. Whereas in a piece of property, you're buying that house.
Mm-hmm.
And the value of that house is not going to drastically change, or we hope it's not going to drastically change within, 1 or 2 months.
Right. So not only is obviously the asset different, but because when you're dealing with houses, you're in real property, you're actually having to go out there and look at it and touch it and feel it and quote it and whatever. But with paper, you're doing it from your desktop usually.
Yeah. But you have to know, because you're going to look at that paper and it's going to say, oh, $70,000. Well, that's where it started. If that thing is 10 years old, it might only be $55,000 or $55,000, $333, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be a lot less than what it says on that face.
Right.
And that number is constantly changing. So let's say you get into it and title is a little murky and it takes you 6 weeks to close that thing. Well, the number where you made that offer, like the actual value of that piece of paper, is going to be lower than what it is when you first did it. So that's why we do it on a percentage of unpaid principal balance.
Mm-hmm. And then also you got to take into account that the people you're dealing with are different. You're not, it's more B2B versus B2C. I don't know. Like, how would you describe that? Because like when you're dealing with property, you're dealing with homeowners and actual investors. Well, I know, but I'm just saying most of the time with real property, you're dealing with wholesalers, you're dealing with flippers, you're dealing with people that are boots on the ground.
Right.
But with notes,
it's more likely, obviously it's either going to be a pretty savvy investor or it's going to be a bank.
mm-hmm.
And the one thing that trips up, and I should qualify it, when you're making an offer percentage of unpaid principal balance, that percentage, I don't ever give a dollar amount for a performing mortgage note.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that borrower is making payments and that price is going to be different when I actually get to the closing table.
Right, but the point I was getting to was the fact that when you're dealing with people in houses, you're dealing with there's emotion tied to a house.
Yes.
You're like,
well, okay.
My father built this armoire that's built into these cabinets. They're handcrafted, and they might be the most disgusting things you've ever seen in your life, but you have to play the game of, yes, they're gorgeous. I like them.
So that's something a little different as well. I'm talking about just how you make your offer, but you're talking about how much emotional attachment, what are you dealing with?
I'm talking about all of it.
Yeah.
Because again, when you're dealing with a seller, you're dealing with a human that only interacts with one piece of property, most likely. There's emotional connection to that property. There's all the baggage, there's the family, there's the friends, there's whatever. And then when you're dealing with a bank, you're dealing with Nancy, who doesn't care.
No. She's making her salary regardless. Her job is to get rid of this stuff off the books.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a performing asset, I'm going to deal with usually direct lenders,
mm-hmm.
private lenders, to buy those performing assets from them.
So other than, now that we've kind of spelled out that difference, like, hey, you've got Steven that has his house that's has an emotional connection, and then you got Nancy who doesn't care. Like this, I don't want to go into this versus that conversation, but what are because this is about negotiating note deals.
Right.
So are we talking about negotiating note deals with banks or just in general?
In general.
Okay.
So when I'm negotiating, when I'm going to buy performing notes, when Capricorn's going to buy performing notes, I have a formula. I can look down this. I did it yesterday with a guy. And he goes, well, I just kind of want to get a ballpark of what you're going to offer. And very few note buyers will do that, right? Because they don't have those numbers stuck in their heads. And I said, all right, let me ask you some questions. And I asked, all right, what's the approximate unpaid principal balance? And he just gave me a ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, oh, it's $160,000. Awesome. What's the interest rate on it? 9.9%. Great. You know, where's it located? Oh, it's right outside of Houston, but it's in the Metroplex. Cool. You know, and so if you go down and ask, is there an RMLO on it? You know, did you do borrow underwriting? Is there a third-party note servicer? Great. Once all those boxes are checked, I can go, yeah, I'm going to probably be somewhere around 91, 92% of unpaid principal balance. They like that. You know, investors will like that method. When you're talking to a bank, a lot of times they're going to give you a starting spot. They're going to say, we're looking for this. And then you're going to go through it, you know, and usually you're not just buying 1 or 2 or 3, you're looking at 100, right? So then you got to go down and grade them all and go, okay, I'll pay 65% of unpaid principal balance on this one, you know, and that's what they're asking. But there might be a bunch that I'm only willing to pay 55 for.
And then you also have to clarify, do you allow cherry picking or do I have to buy the whole thing?
Yes. That also goes into negotiations. So if you're allowed to cherry pick, well, obviously you can offer more on, you know, those 5 or 10 that you cherry pick off that list. Whereas if you're not allowed to cherry pick and you have to take the whole thing, well, in that case, I kind of go, well, I don't want that one. I'm just going to give that a 0.
Right.
Oh, I don't want that one. I'm going to give that a 0. And then I grade the rest to go, yeah, I love this. I'll pay actually a little bit more. I'll pay 70% of unpaid principal balance for that one. And then it kind of, I try to get it to balance out. So in essence, it's like I'm getting, you know, if I have a list of 10, I might be, in my mind, be getting 3 of those for free. Which also works. You know, as long as my numbers with the rest of them work, I don't really care. And they can denote how much I pay for each of
So
those.
what are some negotiating tips then? Because if we've already established that Nancy at the bank doesn't care, and they already have a target of what they want, like, is there negotiating room, or is it just going, okay, they say they want this, but they really want this because I have experience, so let me just give them that number, or do I have to go down that journey so they feel like they are winning?
I think it comes with experience, especially how much you've dealt with that specific. In this case, what you're talking about, how many Nancys have you dealt with? Have you dealt with this bank before? And you know how they work. They want this, but man, they've always asked 65% before, and they accepted 40%, you know, this other time. So you won't really know until you go through the whole dance with them. But what I find is when you're negotiating with somebody brand new who you've never negotiated with, you've got to go through that dance anyways.
So what
to kind of see how they work.
So what if I've been working with 123 Bank for 2.5 years. I've bought literally hundreds or thousands of notes from this particular institution, and the Nancy that I used to work with has retired, or she's been promoted, or whatever, and now I've got Greg.
Happens.
Do you have to?
A lot.
And then Greg's like, "Oh, I'm new at my job. I'm gonna get this. Nancy used to get her to pay this. I'm gonna get so much more money." Is it just more like,
they don't
Greg?
care that much. I don't think they're.
What
sitting
the
there,
shit, Greg?
I don't think they're sitting there talking about that.
Yeah.
I mean, because they're looking to clear their bottom line.
Right.
And they've got, okay, we got to liquidate this. Everybody wants, any seller of anything, right? If you are selling something, you want to get the highest price you possibly can.
Right.
There's a little less emotion, and banks, those bankers, it's not really their money.
So is that?
But they do need to perform and go, hey, look at, he's moved all this.
Right.
And he's done it at a profitable level.
So in a situation like that, it's really not the big deal. It's just maybe you have to go to the dance. Maybe you could be like, Greg, can you just call Nancy, and Nancy will tell you that I perform.
Those loss mitigation specialists,
Mm-hmm.
they know with each of those assets, it's not like they're shooting blindly, right? They know when those things were purchased, how long they performed, how much money they've made off of them now,
Mm-hmm.
to know what they can sell it at and still walk away with a profit.
So what are some tips to move the negotiation in your favor?
All right. So here's a tip for anybody. If you want to learn how to negotiate well, watch that show Pawn Stars.
Ugh.
No, you say that, but I dislike pawn shops or anything. But watch Pawn Stars if you want to be a really good negotiator. What is the number one thing that he always does? What are you looking to get out of us? He'll talk about the item. He will be so knowledgeable. He'll go, this is a great property, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, oh gosh, there's a few nicks and dings. And that's, if you're going into any house, right? You never put out that first offer.
That's a good, what are you looking to get out of this, I think is a great, you could have just said that. You didn't have to lead with Pawn Stars because I think that cheapens the tip.
Does it cheapen the tip?
To me, it does. You could have just said, what are you looking to get out of this? And I'd be like, man, Kristen, that's gold.
That's what I learned.
Why are you giving credit to other people?
I gave credit to other people.
You should just take this. This is real estate. You got to take credit.
You know me. You know me. I mean, come on. Is it? Did I come up with that on my own?
Yeah.
No, but that isn't in negotiations. If you want to be a successful negotiator, you never make that opening offer. You ask, what are you looking to get out of this? Now, a lot of times in banks, if you're dealing with banks or you're dealing with a list of non-performing notes, they're going to give you what their expectation is.
Let me try this out. Seiko, you know that camera you were wanting to get? What are you looking to get out of this?
Better quality?
It doesn't work there.
But it does because the better quality. So, okay, well, so what you're saying is you want better quality, so maybe we're not getting this, but we'll go to this because it is better quality, and boom, I just solved your problem by doing it my way. I'm going to start.
I think you're buying a new camera.
Siri, what time does Pawn Stars start?
I think Seiko wins regardless. I mean, he goes, what do you want? And he's like negotiating. He goes, so I get a new camera?
I guess.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, but yeah, no, when you go into negotiations, first find out what they want. Yeah. What are their expectations of? Because if I go in expecting that every bank wants 65%, and then lo and behold, I get this tape, and they're saying 35 to 40%.
Uh-huh.
And all you have to do is ask. And go,
what do you want?
What do you want for this?
What are you looking to get out of it?
Yeah, what are you looking to get? Cool. Let me see if I can do that. And let me do my due diligence and my research.
And I think those are two distinct, even though they sound very similar, they're two different questions. Because what are you looking to get out of this is like taking the camera conversation. What do you want? I want a blah, 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 123 X thousand or whatever. Okay, but what are you looking to get out? Well, I'm looking to get better quality. Okay, right. Well, if you're looking to get better quality, well, maybe you don't need this. But
maybe there's something else that would be just as good.
Right. So like in this situation, what are you looking to get out of this? Well, I'm looking to get these off my books. Well, what do you want? Well, I want $1 million. I can't give you $1 million, but I can get them off your books or something like that.
Yeah. And it's
$1 million is probably a bad example because
it also works
whatever.
well with, say, a homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What are you looking to get out of this when you're negotiating on a home? Because, they're like, well, I had been renting this out. I didn't really want to get rid of that cash flow, but, I need this. Mm-hmm. Well, you might be able to negotiate an owner finance deal with them. When you always ask, what are you looking to get out of this?
What are you looking to get out of this?
And that works when you are negotiating with anybody.
That's going to be the new question. I'm going to be so annoying with that. Like,
what are you looking to get out of this?
Yeah. Hey, can we do this? What are you looking to get out of this?
So, and a lot of times...
Hey, can I get a coffee? What are you looking to get out of this?
Well, and a lot of times, they're asking me, if it's a performing note deal and it's Texas and I know what I'm going to pay for it, I don't mess around. I'm like, okay, here's my answer.
Yeah.
But when I'm going in and it's blind and you're talking about these banks that have no emotion whatsoever, I need to know, okay, what are you looking for here?
Well, the public has spoken. Manuel basically said, I don't mind if she got it from Palm Stars. Palm Stars, although cheesy, produces millions.
It does. It does. And and I love Chumley.
I don't know what that is.
How can you not love Chumley?
I don't know what that is.
You've never seen this guy? He's basically retarded. He's got like a Forrest Gump IQ.
You can't say that. It's 2020.
Oh, he's special?
I don't know. Maybe.
He needs to ride the short bus. What
That's even worse. You just keep going down.
The dude is like a millionaire now.
Right. Yeah. We should have led with that.
He's funny as crap.
Yeah, you should have led with that.
He's funny as crap. But I mean, I'm like, what is it? He's like 75, 80 points on the IQ scale.
I don't know. God. But he leads all of his questions with, what are you wanting to get out of this?
Yeah, he is. And they finally let him start negotiating some of his own deals.
But when you're dealing with, say, Nancy or Greg at the bank, and you ask, what are you looking to get out of this? If their answer is to get this off my books, but they may have...
Maybe. I mean,
Okay,
it's
maybe.
also, I mean, to get it off their books, but depending on who you're dealing with and what bank you're dealing with, you know, people think, oh my gosh, they're losing so much money by selling this non-performing note at 50% of unpaid principal balance. In essence, they're not. And people don't realize that they were collecting payments for a number of years. They've already made their money on this thing. They've already profited. Yeah, they want it to go away, and they're going to have to sell it at a discount to do that. But are they taking like a humongous loss on this thing? The funny thing is, they've collected payments over the few years on it, but they still show $100,000 unpaid principal balance. If they sell it for $50,000, even though they're not losing over the life of that loan $50,000, they still get to take that $50,000 as a loss.
Yeah, and the way, if you've been paying attention the past several months with like everything that goes on in politics, you know, taking a loss on your taxes can sometimes be just as profitable as actually making the money.
Uh-huh. So when you're selling off these things, realizing those losses, even though you were profiting on them for say 5 to 7 years, you made all your money on that note, you've already, you know, any principal reduction that you're giving, you've already made that. So it's not like net money out the door is a loss, but and people are like, why would they do this?
Yeah.
Because it looks to them like these banks are taking these huge losses, but they're not. And they also know that foreclosure, they have to foreclose on them. It could take many more months. They'd rather just get
hassles, attorneys. Then you got like 2020 rules with COVID and banks and not banks, courthouses and all this. Can you evict? Can you not? Can you actually even get the paperwork done? Oh, I can't even get a signature because they don't have a mask. I don't know. It's on and on and on. Or, hey, sell me that non-performing.
Yes. No. Yes. And it really depends on their timeline. Because if they're going to be, you know, banks are FDIC insured. So if they are going to keep up their
ability to lend,
they have to have so much performance.
Right.
So they can't
we've talked about that all summer about how some of these banks, it's almost like they're playing like they're not cheating, but like cheating in the sense like when you're playing a video game. It's actually cheating, but it's just like, how are you? Are you like God mode right now? Because like all summer long, they're like, oh, we're selling our non-performings at 150%, or I'm exaggerating, but it's like
no, it was 80%,
right?
Which is super high.
Stupid. But it's like, oh, maybe it's because they had all that SBA money infused into their banks and they didn't have to sell.
Well,
who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if banks got PPP money. I don't.
But they're the ones that held it to issue it out.
Yeah, they held it to issue it out.
So therefore, that with the FDIC rules, it leveled it out to where like, oh, maybe I don't have to do this. But
and that might be. I mean, if they were trying to get PPP money out,
yeah,
they might not have had to. I mean, and that might be a reason why they might not have had to keep a certain amount of reserves.
Who knows?
Who knows? I mean, I don't know.
I'm waiting for the documentary that's going to come out in 3 to 4 years.
On explaining everything that happened?
Yeah.
Well, you know, hindsight being what it is awesome.
Yeah. Tanner, good to see you last night at Tang Wynn's event. One of his favorite negotiating is like, what would you like to happen? When he's talking about to sellers. What would you like to happen?
What would you like to happen?
But that's essentially the same thing what you're saying. It's just different wordage.
What are you looking to get out of this? What would you like to see here? All of those are about the same questions, but always making sure that you don't offer.
Yeah,
Don't make the first dollar offer. Ask them what they're looking for because they've got an idea.
But what if you want to keep it open ended? But what if if you're like, well, what do you want to happen? Well, I'd like for you to make me an offer. Well, I'd like to give you an offer, and then you get through that loop of just whatever. You're like,
I know, and and you are gonna have savvy negotiators regardless of who you're dealing with. So I mean, and know that But the number one rule in negotiating is never open with an offer. Always try to get them to at least give you some guidance of where you're going because you don't want to overshoot.
So far, in this conversation about negotiating notes, I've heard the key takeaways so far are never make a number first, but you could almost apply that to pretty much any negotiating. The second thing is, what are you looking for? What are you trying to get out of this? What do you want to happen? What do you want? But also just keep in mind that you're not dealing with sellers, you're dealing with business to business when you're talking to banks. And that dialogue is more of a, we need this to happen versus having that emotional component
Right. I
to
mean,
it.
if you get to the point where you're getting an enormous mortgage tape, you've got a couple hundred lines on there, they want to sell all of those.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be like, oh, we're only going to sell them if we get X amount of dollars. They want to sell all of them. And so
Right.
they're going to be dealing with what's the best offer, what's the highest offer, who can close the fastest.
But even then, is it always the best and highest offer, or is it the offer that's going to get most of them off the books at one time?
Usually it's who's going to take all of it.
Right.
And very rarely if they say cherry picking, I'm not going for all of it. I'll take some stuff off the list. If there's something on there that I absolutely want and they tell me I've got to take all of it, as long as it's not too crazy, I will.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, that goes into a lot with notes.
Cool.
On doing it. But remember, it's, the difference between making an offer in real estate, even if the note seller tells you, hey, I need $20,000 for this, you still want to verify what's your unpaid principal balance on that and make sure that that percentage falls into where you should be. Does that make sense for you?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because a lot of times, I mean, even for note sellers, that I deal with, they want a dollar amount for that.
Well, everybody wants it. Just give me, what's the dollar amount?
What's the dollar amount? So really, you're doing math. I mean, even if I tell them, okay, I'm going to pay you 50% of unpaid principal balance, I will then convert that into a dollar amount.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still thinking everything in percentages.
So as far as any other key aspects of negotiating for notes, because I know that we was very high level and we were just like, hey, here's a couple things. Is there anything that I know we probably didn't, we were only scratching the surface, but is there anything that you want to cover before we wrap up?
Well,
That's basically what I'm asking.
All right. So 1, never make the first offer. 2, know who your seller is. Is your seller an individual? Is your seller a bank? Is your seller a hedge fund? All of those are going to deal differently or require a different level of offer. And
that would actually make a good series for our notes group. Like how to, I mean, we've already done like how to talk to certain people, but like knowing your seller.
Knowing your seller.
Yeah.
And it's, that goes back to a lot of things. I mean, you can put that with a lot of things, or know who your audience is. And then lastly, make sure and do your due diligence before you start really talking numbers.
Right.
Because nothing pisses off a seller more than going, hey, I'm going to pay you this, and then coming back going, oh, sorry, I missed this.
Especially, I would assume, talking to like a bank, because like, again, if it's a B2B conversation, they expect you to be the other B being as business. So if you come at them like, hey, wishy-washy, blah, 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 they're gonna be like, who the F are you? Why are you taking my time? You weren't prepared. I scheduled 15 minutes, 20 minutes for this meeting. I'm giving you, and you're not, you don't even know who, whatever, blah, 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 blah.
And that's
hang up.
anything in real estate.
Yeah.
Always do your due diligence. Know exactly what you're making an offer on. 2, know who you're dealing with. 3, never make the first offer.
I think that's really, really solid advice.
It's pretty specific.
So, real quick, Passing Notes Group. If you go to passingnotesgroup.com, that is KRISTIN and I's notes group, where every week we meet, do training videos, do mastermind, do Q&As for all the members. It's the intention to buy is to go from zero to hero in the note space. But in addition to that is one of the things that I know KRISTIN's most passionate about, which is
I want to build a community of
army.
Millionaire note investors.
An army, not a community.
So that, well, an army, a community, whatever, an army, where we have, 50, 100, 200, 500 people where we can easily go bounce ideas off, 1, 2, sell the notes that we pick up, because I teach everybody how to go out and find these notes on their own. People to buy from us, people to buy from, obviously, because if somebody else has a great tape, You might want some of those notes off of it. Then people to partner with and people to loan money. Because there might be guys that are going, gosh, I'm just so busy with everything else that I'm working on, but I've got some money I want to put to work. Hey, does anybody have a note they want to buy?
Well, if
and
you
I
want
think
more
that's
information-
good. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
when you're creating a group, yes, everybody needs education and everybody needs to learn how to do it. But then past that, what do you do? And it, you know, if everybody is working together, it's just a great way
What's
to-
funny about that is when we were first putting this together, I was like, oh, we could do like a book club too, where we all read the same book. She's like, well, the problem with that is there's not any good books out there. Shots fired.
You know, you laugh at me because I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You're like, what book would you like to recommend me? I'm like, no, none of them.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so if you want more information on that, hit me up, hit KRISTIN up, go to the site itself, passingnotesgroup.com. We take new people on once a month. We try not to do in the middle of the month. We want to do it at the beginning or at the end of the month so you can get in the next month. It's pretty legit. I think the people in there so far are enjoying it. Passing Notes YouTube. If you go to youtube.com/passingnotes, make sure you like, subscribe, turn the alert bell. We do this twice a week in the morning-ish. Ish. Right before we go live with the group members. So check us out. Follow me, Ryan S. Harper, on the Instagrams. Follow KRISTIN at
KRISTIN GERST on the Instagrams.
On the Instagrams. Not just the one, but the plural Instagrams.
Look, it's up there.
Yeah, it is up there.
Yay.
So we'll see you next time. Thanks for being here. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below.